people on the call, we didn't think we should entertain with that. So
we will give you the opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation that we are just about to hear. If you have questions about HomeNE or the land bank itself, please feel free to type them into the chat box. If you are unfamiliar, if this is your first time on Zoom, if you hover your cursor over the screen and down in the bottom black bar, there is a chat icon that if you hover over and click on it, the chat box will appear on your right-hand side. Down at the bottom, there is a box that you can type in questions. And as Marty is giving his presentation, we'll take some time to answer those as we go along, and then do a little bit of processing after the presentation as well for deeper learning. It is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce to you Marty Barnhart, who is a vocationally diverse, proven leader and a people motivator. He has served business and nonprofits, developing deep relationships in Omaha as well as across the United States. Marty led the Land Bank Reutilization Commission for 13 years, returning nearly 7,000 tax delinquent properties to a revenue-producing status. Currently, he serves as the director of the Omaha Municipal Land Bank. His role as the director of the Land Bank allows him to bring positive changes to people and property all over the metro area. The Omaha Municipal Land Bank serves as a catalyst for transforming distressed properties into community assets. Marty, we are delighted to learn from you this afternoon. Take it away.
Thank you so much. I sure appreciate it. I'll have the opportunity to switch to my screen and be able to show you the presentation this afternoon and be able to give you an opportunity to not only see what we're talking about, but also interact with me as we work our way through. So as has been said, don't hesitate to ask questions as we go and have the opportunity to chat with me as well. And we'll sure answer your questions as best I'm able to, and then as well be able to do a number of items that will help us to move forward. Francis, doesn't look like I'm able to share my screen, so can you help me with that? It is disabled on my end.
Let's see.
I'm the host now. Thank you so much. I see it, and you should be able to see my screen. All right, I'll bring it up for you. All right, you can all see it, I hope, and be able to work our way through. The Omaha Municipal Land Bank is just a really unusual creation of the Nebraska legislature. We've been thrilled to be able to receive this legislation in Omaha, be able to interact with citizens across the state of Nebraska, but also be able to bring great enhancements to our own communities and the neighborhoods here in Omaha. You'll notice by the picture that I show you in this next slide that this fire-damaged home is just one of the many distressed properties we see here in Omaha. To count as of today, we have approximately 4,000 properties in Omaha that have some kind of a distressed condition. These are just properties that contain a code enforcement violation and may be moving toward demolition, like this property you see here on the screen. Our vision is to make Omaha an even better place to live by taking these perpetually problem properties and turning them into community opportunities, community assets, if you will, and really changing the face of entire neighborhoods. Our goal in doing this is to be transparent, letting folks know about the information, the activities, the financials, and of course the accomplishments, and as our funders would often tell me, the challenges too. So we want to make sure that they're aware and that you're aware that it's not an easy task every day, but it is very, very worthwhile to see things happen in neighborhoods, to work as a team, as we say here, by way of values, partnerships, and show you the rich history and heritage of our city being preserved by virtue of helping these properties to come back alive. Land banks are not new here in the United States. You'll notice on the screen there's 150 different land banks across the country today, most of which are gathered up in the northeast corner of the United States. And as they're a result of the mortgage meltdown that happened in '08. When that took place, we saw a number of different cities like Detroit, Cleveland, and others need some way to move these properties from a place where they were bank real estate owned, tax delinquent, possibly even code enforcement like we have here in Omaha, back into a place where they were both revenue generating, but also renewable or redevelopable, if you will, for people who might live in these neighborhoods. Detroit alone has 50,000 properties in their land bank. Can you imagine? 50,000. We don't have anything that big here in Omaha, and we're so thankful for that. But we do see across the country that land banking is becoming something that is now not only concentrated here in the eastern part of the United States and now Midwest, but also up in Oregon and in California. There's also some land banks that have started there and beginning to work. What we do each and every day is seek to acquire, maintain, and dispose of these properties that need to have the title cleared, the taxes delinquent, taxes extinguished, and by assembling parcels, make them available to developers. We have the opportunity as a public authority to extinguish the taxes and make the title clear. This is what's unique about the land bank. I was down at the legislature a couple weeks ago, and they asked me, what difference does it make to have a land bank in the community? And I said two things. Number one, we can clear the title on a property. Most every lien can go away because of the land bank legislation. Taxes are canceled. Property is put back into a clear title situation. What we can't take care of and take away would be EPA violations, bankruptcy violations, or of course, something that might happen by virtue of an IRS lien. But those liens are the ones that oftentimes we settle at closing or work with the individual or the bank to get those settled and other entities that might be involved. We have the ability, though, to be able to sustain the land bank by being able to sell the properties and then recapture 50% of the property taxes over the next 5 years. For those of you in communities who are thinking about taxation and the tax whole rolls, for you this could be a little distressing, but think of it this way. You get nothing today from these properties, and if you could get 50% from a property that is being rehabilitated and changed over the next 5 years and is back up to literally a livable, safe, and healthy home, wouldn't that be worth it in your community? That's what Omaha saw. And in 2013, when the legislation was passed, that's what they were saying to the Nebraska legislature. Let us try this, let us have this, and in turn, we could have the opportunity to be able to use this, not as a developer, not as a public housing authority, not even as a redevelopment authority or a planning office. We'll be just the agency to house these properties, maintain them for a short time, and get them off to a developer. The legislation began in 2012, and in that year, it was introduced to the Nebraska legislature. It was soundly defeated in committee, and the Urban Affairs Committee did not ever come out. In 2013, with local advocacy, civic leaders, and the Greater Omaha Chamber, it was reintroduced to the legislature. Testimony came there from many who said, we believe this would work, and it was passed unanimously in the committee, on the legislative floor as well, and came to Omaha in July of 2014. The city council debated it, passed it. The board was appointed by the Omaha mayor, at that time Gene Stothert, who is still our mayor now. It was confirmed by the civic leaders here, our Omaha City Council. Funding was put in place, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and our first board meeting took place in December of 2014. During 15, 16, and 17, we tried to put the nuts and bolts in place, policies, partnerships, personnel. And then last year began to roll out a property inventory and show people what we had for sale, how we were going to sell it. And we've already seen neighborhood transformation begin to take place in some of these neighborhoods. By way of short-term goals, we wanted to put in a property tracking system, something that would be available for folks to see at omahalandbank.org. They could go there, look at a property, much like an MLS or multi-listing service listing, see it, understand it, know its values, and have links to not only local government for taxes and assessed values, but also see links like Zillow, so they could compare values and understand what this property could be worth if it was transformed. Quality relationships were really, really important to us. To establish these relationships, put together funding for ongoing operations, have some properties to acquire, dispose, rehab, and redevelop, and then finally, see these maintained at high standards in our neighborhoods, and of course, inspire change in those very neighborhoods where these properties are located. By way of long-term, our goals are these, I should say, to increase property values, capital investment, and real estate investment all across our community. See a decrease in vacant lots. One area of our community, our northeast section today, is an area with 1/3 of its area being all vacant lots because of tax foreclosure, because of demolition, because of folks leaving that part of our community. Literally our area east of 48th Street, west of the river, south of Ford and north of Dodge is an area now today that has a concentration of a third of it being vacant lots that we're seeking to assemble and turn back into developable sites. Get rid of the code violations, get them down so they're manageable by our city, and of course, decrease the budget expenditures for demolition. Our goals here are really 5. Move together with 5 different pillars and have the opportunity for folks to engage with us and see what we do. I'll pause for a minute and ask for any questions as I go into this next slide. Our goal here, as we do an acquisition planning strategy, is to look to the properties in 4 different areas. Number 1, the tax lien certificate area. All across our state on the first Monday of March, not too much time from now, about 2 weeks from now, we're going to see the tax lien certificate sale take place. We as a land bank have the opportunity to invest in these properties prior to the investors. We have to go in by certain criteria, making sure it's vacant, making sure it's abandoned, making sure it's a property that indeed needs rehab. We can invest in these properties at the market value, that is the tax value on the property, and then we can hold them for those next 3 years or until they're redeemed. In the first year, actually today, currently, we have about $85,000 in investments already in place. $49,000 took place in 2017, and about $39,000 were redeemed last year of those rolls. We also deal in improved property sales, that is those that were in code enforcement. This particular home in the picture was one that was in outside this normal neighborhood where we work at about 51st and Blondo here in Omaha. This was a house we bought. An individual had let it go into code enforcement. It was threatening to be condemned and torn down, and we were able to work with the developer, an individual who bought it, and he must redevelop the property now over the next 9 months and bring it back up to a safe and livable homes. Vacant lots, obviously, we deal in those a lot. And as we do, we sold 31 of those properties last year for an average of $1,028 each. They are buildable lots in many cases, and they have 2 years to get those redeveloped. Along with Habitat and land assemblies, we put these together in properties where a nonprofit or for-profit could work with them. And finally, and I'll pause after this next area, the Vision 400 is our vision to be able to assist the city of Omaha with demolitions over the next 4 years to tear down 400 of the worst homes like this one that have that fire red X or orange X on it that we know needs to be addressed. What are you thinking about here? What's intriguing you? What are you wondering about as you think about these areas I've talked about already, please? Any questions?
Marty, this is Deb, and
Yes,
I
Deb.
have a question. What do you wish that what do you wish you had known 5 years ago that you know now? Having had your experience over this journey and getting these things into place, what is it that you wish you had known then?
I probably would have wished you would have told me how long it was going to take, Deb, to put it together. But then if you would have told me that, I would have been discouraged because I would have said, oh my, this is going to take a long time, and it must be something that really reflects how slow the wheels turn when it comes to legislation, implementation, and putting things together. But that being aside, probably the thing I would want to know would be the importance of you reminding me about neighborhood engagement. We have found that to be critical. As I came on board 2 years ago, we knew it was important to engage neighbors, but now today we know it's critical. Critical to our success, critical to what we see in neighborhoods, and so much happens on the street that doesn't happen in the government or the civic center office, that we find ourselves on the street a lot. And that really has been one of the greatest learnings we've gotten.
Who have been some of your more untraditional partners in this event?
Just individuals, Deb, have been really the untraditional partners. We've had single people, couples, others. I had a couple recently who bought a home. They were retired, looking for a way to give back to the community. It was somebody I never dreamed would buy a house from us and now is going to hire contractors to get it done. They have a little bit of skill, but they want to hire people and then rent this property out at a value that somebody could afford. They don't want to make the money. They just want to see a person have a home. The other guy that surprised me was a single dad. A dad who came in and said, I want a place for my son and myself, and he bought a home from us for $7,500. And in 3 months, almost 4 months time total, he transformed that home into their home, and now today lives there. Pretty cool.
Great stories. I see in the chat box, and others feel free to capture your questions there as well. John Madsen asks, Marty, could you expand on the 50% recapture of property tax over 5 years? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I sure can. In each and every county, we know the assessment is taking place usually between September and December of each year, where the county assessor is reviewing those properties, looking at values. We don't actually begin to recapture those tax values until a year after that assessment takes place. So let's say, for instance, this home that I've got here on the screen still, it was sold this year, closed actually in January, just a month ago. We won't see tax recapture on this property until 1 year from now, when the new assessment rolls through at the end of 2018 and in the beginning of 2019. That 50% tax recapture literally creates us as a governmental subdivision in the treasurer's office. And when that property taxes comes through, it will automatically send us 50% of the taxes on a given year, or about somewhere between $600 and $1,200 on an average property that we'll recoup and be receiving year by year over the next 5 years.
Thank you. Other questions of clarity that you would have for Marty at this point in time? Okay, Marty.
If there's none, I'll move on and show you some other pillars. Our end-use partnership strategy, we find it so very important, as I said earlier, to really have good partnerships. One of the early learnings we have was to say to folks, this is not about turf, this is not about competition, this is about us working together. So you'll see in my oval, the City of Omaha, nonprofit developers, OHA or Omaha Housing Authority, our banks and community development corporations, the Land Utilization Commission, all surrounding the land bank. We want to be a good partner with them to be able to tackle these worst of the worst properties that are vacant, abandoned, code violations, etc., and see sometimes to be demolition as our best option. Now, believe me, I love housing, and I love our city and our state. I've lived here most of my life. I was a transplant from Iowa when I was 12 years old, so now after just a few years, you can tell from my great complexion that indeed it's a great place to live, but also it's something that I believe in very much, to see our city redeveloped and our state really enhanced with housing. We want to assist in redevelopment areas with the City of Omaha, places like Prospect Village or Deer Park. These are areas that the city concentrates on. These are areas that Habitat, Holy Name Housing, and nonprofit developers build in. There's areas where OHA needs some assistance from us by virtue of bringing property together, clearing title, and making it available to them. But our goal is this: bring together all these entities and take away the title problems, lower the cost of the properties being sold, and give it to them in a way that could be redeveloped over either 9 months for an improved property, a house or a building, or over 2 years' time for a vacant lot. Community engagement is so critical. There's 150 different neighborhood groups here in Omaha, of which about 50 to 60 are active at any given time. And in turn, we go out and speak there, talk to them, meet with these for-profit developers like New Style, Shamrock Development, etc. And then, of course, our nonprofits, we help them with tax lien certificates, with finding property, clearing title, and also depositing property with us. As you know from your assessment rolls, a property is not tax exempt by a nonprofit unless it is being actually used by them for an office or some other use by the nonprofit itself. It can't just be sheltered by them and be a non-taxable property. We can provide that for them for up to 5 years, and we do so. They pay for the maintenance on it, they take care of the property, but we assist them, and then when we transfer it back to them, we also receive 50% of the tax recapture on the property when they build the property out and develop it. Currently today with Habitat and 75 North, we're holding about 350 properties total for those two entities. We just brought in our first one with another. And again today, as it says here on the screen, almost 400 plus properties are being held for these nonprofits for the sake of future development and future change in our neighborhoods. We believe in community engagement. We have a monthly meeting, just took place this week on the second Wednesday. a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for. Trust me, I won't spam you. We won't sell your email address. We just want to give you the glimpse of what's going on, and you can find that at omahalandbank.org or follow us on social media with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our goal is to be out, to talk to people, connect with people, take away the fear that quite often people have because they're afraid of, number one, gentrification. Will my neighborhood change from what it was? Second, what if you take away a house that I always wanted? You're going to take it away by eminent domain. And my answer is, I can't. I have no power of eminent domain, and neither would any land bank across the state. The legislation is very clear. We can purchase it. We can assist in foreclosure on it, but we can't levy taxes. We can't have eminent domain, and we have no ability to take a property away from someone that they wouldn't already give us the opportunity to purchase from them. Any questions here, please? By way of fund development, quite often I'm asked when I speak, so how do you operate? How do you have the money to put this all together? And the answer is we have some tremendous philanthropic support all across our state. Peter Kiewit Foundation and others like Susan and Walter Scott Foundation have been integral in helping us get set up. Mutual of Omaha actually led the charge for us with their corporate division. A gentleman named Dan Neary, who is the former CEO, led the charge and assisted us with our funding, so that between 16 and 18, our first 3 years of operations have been literally deposited for us on a year-by-year basis so we can begin to operate and put things together. The goal here is not to have operational support given by the funders, but to come through the sale of property with tax recapture and other administrative fees we might collect. So by way of acquisition, investment, maintenance, demolition, and communication, these programs would be the funding mechanisms for the years to come that I'd be seeking to raise funding or foundation support from. I write grants on a regular basis, usually weekly. I'm writing a grant. It's about telling your story. And it's exciting to do so. And these funders have been tremendous for us to be able to allow us to be able to be funded now for these first 3 years of operation, 16 through 18. And they've said to me, we'll fund whatever you need, just move it towards self-support as soon as you can, which we hope to have in place in 100% fashion by the end of 2019. We also have this Vision 400 project that we're working on with the city. And in so doing, we're seeking to be able to move folks or move this property from a place, to be able to show what it would do and how it would do it in a given basis so people would know that we're moving things forward and really helping things go well. It's funny because quite often the dilemma with any kind of presentation like this one is sometimes you get off, but here I'm back. In the other case, sometimes you wonder, will you ever have enough money? And the answer is we've got great philanthropic support across our state, and with good engagement, I believe the money is going to be there to take care of it. My hope for Nebraska would be that no community would try to do this by themselves. Sharon and I have talked at length about looking at Nebraska and breaking it up into districts. If the state was broken up into districts, much like has been done with the South Central Economic District, and across the state have these different districts, by interlocal agreement, a smaller village, a larger community could band together with these distressed properties, have a board appointed, and represent the interest within that community set, and therefore have possibly as many as 1,000 properties per district, which would make it very much the opportunity for it to be self-sustaining, self-supporting, and being able to move forward. This 13th of the 14th slide I'll take, and I'll answer any questions you might have. We believe in organizational excellence to assess, acquire, prepare, and dispose. That is, take these properties and move them from a place where they were tax delinquent, non-revenue producing, non-helpful for a neighborhood, and move them to a place where they can be sold or disposed into a developer's hands. Currently, we have a staff of 6. I've hired this year a number of different staff, both last year and this now, with myself, an acquisitions director, communications director, an assistant, investment director, asset director, and finally, began to add our first intern this past year as well. We believe in interns, giving them opportunity to get opportunity for experience and learning and be able to do some things, hopefully, that will add to their resume and give to their learning as well. What questions do you have, please?
While the group is forming some of their questions and putting them into the chat box, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the new land bank legislation.
I sure will. LB 854 is currently in the hands of the Nebraska legislature. It's a bill that was introduced to the Urban Affairs Committee. It went through committee. You voted unanimously to be taken to the floor of the legislature. This would allow any city or village in the state of Nebraska to have a land bank if they desire to do so. It is not mandatory legislation. It is selective legislation that if a city or village would like to have one, they may choose to do so. And in turn, they'd have the opportunity to establish a land bank by interlocal agreement, join together with another village or community, and put together a set of properties that they could move toward a place where they could be redeveloped. We're hopeful that this will become a priority bill before the end of our legislative session, which ends April 30th. And if that's the case, it'll be exciting to see that land banking could be something that could be available all across the state of Nebraska.
Are there other questions, either of clarity or of any of the information that Marty has shared with us today? Well, I'd like to open it up to the group, actually. This is a perfect opportunity to begin to share some information that all of you are bringing to the table this afternoon. And Francis, I'm wondering if you could unmute everyone. If we can keep the paper wrestling to a minimum, that'll be helpful. But let's go ahead and think about your own world, your communities. What can you share with us, anyone, about the political landscape in your community? What do you think the temperature of the water is in your neighborhood for this kind of approach? What do you think the benefits might be? What do you think the challenges might be? Please feel free to share what you're thinking about right now after Marty's presentation. And as you do, could you just say your name and your community as you begin to speak? What's going on out there?
This is Susie in Red Cloud, and we live in a historic community, and we have a, we know there's a need to save historic properties, but have a problem balancing people seeing the need, because that's where visitors, come in. They come to see the historic properties and what's been preserved. But then we run into no system to really evaluate properties to decide if they're worthy of being saved, if they aren't, why, and just have an even balance there.
Susie, that's a great question. It's something that we've addressed here in Omaha. My last individual hired this year was a gentleman who has a contracting background and also a code enforcement background. He has been integral to be able to walk on site to a property and assess, number one, its current condition, number two, the cost of redevelopment, and then third, he comes back and works with our acquisitions director, and they determine the cost of the comparable values in the neighborhood where that property is located to determine if the property can be rehabbed, can be sold, and can be put back together for a fair price so that a developer could be interested. We're trying as hard as we can to save every property possible. Now, those with foundation damage, sometimes we can, but those with a severe fire damage, sometimes we cannot. So in turn, we, like you, want to save every property possible historicity-wise and, of course, for the sake of housing. And we find that if we assess them correctly, even if we sell them for just $500, it retains the property and gets it redeveloped. And in turn, I have done that, sold a property for as little as $500, and I've got one today that's going to be rehabbed beginning this spring, and the developer will get in there, rebuild the foundation in a part of the house, and put it back together as a single-family house. Great question.
Thank you.
Who else has a comment of what they are seeing in their world and how this kind of approach might translate? Marty, do you see similarities or differences? You have worked in urban Omaha, and a lot of these folks on the line today are across rural Nebraska. What are the similarities or differences that people should be mindful of if they were to move in this direction in their communities?
Number one, our similarities are the same in the respect that everyone needs a place to live. One of the best ways to arrest poverty and put it away is to provide housing for people that could result in jobs, transportation, the enhancement of food and finding food, and of course, just rebuilding community. So housing really unites us all across the state. It doesn't matter whether it's greater Nebraska or here in the eastern side of the state here in Omaha, large and small cities alike, villages alike, we need housing. Number two, the things that also put us together are values. Though values may differ across the state, our own particular communities need the enhancement or the raising of values to be able to enhance taxes and enhance full neighborhoods. So value is always a critical factor. Density is third. With density, with people, come back services. We know that we want some people to come back and service our neighborhoods, whether it be a plumber, electrician, etc. But without those kind of people there, that is the people who live there, those services won't follow. Differences would be size. Always size is a differentiator. As I drive across the state, some would say driving across Nebraska is like driving across eternity. It's really not. It's a very beautiful state. And in turn, I think there's a lot to see. I love to drive. And so in turn, your community is different than mine in respect of just size. But otherwise, there's really not a lot of difference. Hopefully you'll move faster than we did. Hopefully that'll be a differentiator. And you'll be able to put this together in a way that'll help your community and really enhance your own particular set of neighborhoods.
Thank you. Any other questions that occur to you at this point in time?
You know, I have a comment. This is Sharon with South Central Economic Development District. And as we conduct nuisance abatement in communities across our region, we see a fair amount of dilapidation, and cities and villages feel a little bit stuck. And so I'm excited about the opportunity to maybe see this roll out across the state. You know, when you end up with a demolished property and you have a lot that's worth $3,000 and $50,000 worth of liens on it, it's kind of hard for that city or village to get rid of it. And I see this as a tool to really be able to do some great things. And I'm curious if I'm the only one or if we have some of these community people that are seeing some good opportunities there.
Sharon, this is Sarah Arnett, and I would agree with you about the potential that this has. I'm wondering, is SCED contemplating developing a land bank that would cover its 13-county area, for example?
Marty, I might let you address that in that, you know the particulars better, but in the legislation, the board for a land bank is spelled out pretty specifically. So I think it would be, we would certainly be glad to partner, but I think it would be more of a, would have its own board. Marty, do you want to address that?
Sure. Well, Sarah, that's a great question. It wouldn't be something that could be coming from the state level. It'd have to come from the village or city level, in the respect that the village or city would need to determine if they want the land bank to be a part of their community goal of redevelopment. And then second, they would form the board, and then by interlocal agreement, they would come together across perhaps an 11 to 13 county area. If they did it that way, then they could combine their efforts through interlocal agreement and be able to address the properties all together with one land bank that might represent all those communities and all those counties. Now, this would be a municipal land bank. So therefore, we would be working with you to set this up, and you would be working then within your own municipality. You could then use a tool like the Land Utilization Commission that is a county tool and bring that under the umbrella of the land bank, or let it work separately in concert with it to be able to take care of taxation, revenue production, and putting those properties in a county region back into a way that they could be used as well. We have found that as we work with the city, we're able to not only assist them with funding by virtue of the foundations that are helping us for demolition, but then also purchase those vacant lots, get those assembled, and make those available to a developer. So as Sharon said, this is a great tool for being able to work in concert with your municipality, find the funding that's so hard as to able to be found, and then last, get the property ready and get it sold.
Other comments out there as you have listened to this? What is occurring to you at this point in time?
This is Susie again, and I have a question as far as Habitat for Humanity. Is that all used for new builds, Marty, or have you been able to utilize that for improving properties also?
Thank you, Susie. Great question. We've seen both. Matter of fact, I'm sheltering about 250 properties for Habitat right now. They just contacted me this year and asked if we would also take out property and casualty insurance about a half dozen houses because they want to redevelop those houses rather than tear them down. That's not only good for the neighborhood to continue to have that home, but also for the historicity wise, it's great to be able to see the property put back together and retain that original historicity to literally rebuild the house right on site. Now, when we do that for the nonprofit, they pay for the maintenance, they take care and make it sure it's secure. We do check on it, and they do take care of that PNC coverage. We provide liability coverage on all properties we hold, regardless of who we hold them for. So in case somebody slips, in case somebody falls, we would be covered, or they would be covered, I should say better, in the case of any hospitalization or care they would need. But yes, we're seeing both new builds and redevelopment with Habitat here in Omaha.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alan has just typed into the chat box, great presentation, tons of potential in land banks, thanks. I'm wondering what are the benefits that those of you who are listening see in this kind of approach in your particular community? How could you see this being put to good use in your environment? Well, let's flip it then. What would you say would be the challenges that you are imagining in getting started in this kind of approach? What are some of the barriers you think you might run into, either from a systems perspective or from the just perceptions within the community? What would you think you might run into as you began down this road?
This is Susie again. And
Hi, Susie. I'm glad you're on the phone.
Really? I see one challenge would be communication, making sure everyone is aware totally of what you're doing and how it's working. Because in small communities, stories get started and whatever. And if you just keep everyone on the same page, not only are they informed, but they tend to want to get involved too. So
that's good.
Very beneficial.
Susie, that is so true. Matter of fact, we find that Omaha is really just a small city within a big town. And we see that because it's clustered in so many different districts like Benson, Dundee, Northeast Omaha, South Omaha, et cetera, there's so much that folks talk about, wonder about, and unfortunately fear that it's good for us to be out communicating. And of course, as you know, if we can send that message out through many different ways where we talk to folks and touch folks, they can communicate the message well, we hope, in a way that'll be positive and, of course, changing. We found that early on in 2013, 2014, it was so imperative to be out talking. My first year, very honestly, was a year, 2016, where I had 900 appointments that year, and all I was doing was going down the street. I couldn't believe how many times a day I was out just talking to people, but that's all I did. I was just seeing them, meeting with them, and telling the story about what this legislation could be in Omaha. And in turn, it's lit the fire and been amazing what we've seen to come alive here in our city that now I believe is being really thought about all across our state.
Wow. As far as a plus, back to the last question, one thing in smaller communities, it's a challenge sometimes. Families aren't able financially to build a new home, but it makes so much more of the housing affordable to them, decent housing affordable to them, if we can rehab some of these.
You're so right. I mean, my goal here is to see us sell a house to a guy like Cameron for $7,500. And this young man literally put in his own money. He probably put in a total of $20,000 in that home, but a lot of sweat equity, I looked at him one day when I went over to visit him, and I said, Cameron, you look terribly tired. He said, well, I've been up all night doing drywall. I said, you're serious? He said, yeah. He says, I've never done it before in my life, but I'm learning. And it was beautiful. But he was a guy that was sweat equity with his own dollars, spent a total of about $30,000. And that guy will literally be debt-free for the days to come. He owes no money to a bank or anybody else. But that's my goal. 5, 7, or 10 years, give a family a home, let them become debt-free, and begin to build their wealth, either to sell it, rent it, or move on and buy another, and have the opportunity to continue to do that. But a single family, wow, what if we could really inspire that change in our cities and villages?
Great story.
Really, that's great.
Thank you, Marty.
Mhm.
There's a note from Sarah Arnett who says expertise and manpower would be significant challenges in her area. And John Madsen asks a question, what is needed currently to get this through the unicameral and working in our state?
Oh, good question, John. Thank you. If you would each reach out to Senator Dan Quick and let him know that you're interested in this legislation moving forward, that will add a ton of real good steam to this legislation. What we're seeing in the legislature, like in any other bill, is that when a set of constituents gets involved by virtue of email, telephone, or cards or letters they will send, it really fuels the fire. And the senators understand that people are listening, people are reading, and people are wanting some change. So please get a hold of Senator Dan Quick out of Grand Island, or let your senator know that you're interested in this. And in turn, it'll make a huge difference for the legislation.
Paul Bartlett asks the question, are the properties being acquired all zoned residential, SFH, or MFH, or are all some mixed use / commercial?
Thank you. Great question. We see about 85% of our properties being residential single-family homes. The reason for doing so is because these are the ones that quite often slip through that folks either lose sight of, lose money to keep developed, or age out and they can't live there any longer, or they pass away. It's a rarity, probably 10% of the time, that we see commercial buildings, because they do get rehabbed, they have a higher value, and in turn the taxes get paid. And again, 5% or less are industrial. Very rarely do we see an industrial building. I've got one I'm holding right now for St. Vincent de Paul here in the Northeast Omaha area, but that was given to them. It wasn't a property that the original owner wanted to continue to hold, and St. Vincent de Paul will turn it into a learning center. So again, majority of properties in your communities like ours will be single-family homes to be rehabbed and turned into new housing.
Thanks. And Brenda Jones asks, how do you ensure that the buyer actually improves the property? What's the recourse? What's the recourse?
Great question. We do 3 things, Brenda, right off the top. Number 1, what are you going to do with this property? We want to know. Second, tell us what you're going to do with it. You're going to live in it, you're going to rent it, or are you going to turn around and sell it? Second, what's the cost of redevelopment that you estimate for this property? We'll match it with our redevelopment estimate. They're willing to look at ours if they want to. It's free of charge. But what's their cost of redevelopment? And then third, what are the dollars? That is, do they have the dollars to be able to put back into the redevelopment of that property? Now, that's all fine and good, making the statement, showing us the redevelopment costs and showing us the money. But then on the deed, it states that they have 9 months to redevelop that improved property, or 2 years to redevelop that vacant lot. That deed is a covenant on the deed. It continues to be a cloud during the course of that time frame, 9 months or 2 years. And if they don't take care of it, the property automatically reverts back to the land bank.
Okay. Well, last shot over the back. Yes, go ahead, please.
Dale Curtis from Hastings. I'm on the Adams County board and also on the SCED board. This land bank I see is probably one of the best ideas that I can think of, because so many people, even in the community of Hastings, don't realize how important the small communities south of Hastings are.
Yes.
That's our bedroom district, and we need to make sure they thrive. And this I think would be one way that we could help do that. And it gives me some encouragement.
Dale, that's great. I mean, I agree with you. I think this is something that not only would help the community of Hastings with maybe just a few or a handful, but wow, all around the area. And folks, I want you to know, we rarely see the family farm as a part of this context. The family farm is protected by virtue of a 3-year redemption period on taxation. It's protected by ag values. And quite often, a farm family can go back, get things taken care of over that 3-year period. I have never in my history with the city or the county ever seen a farm come through the tax rolls through delinquency and gone through to either the land bank or the land utilization commission. I believe this is a tool that would be used within our villages, within our cities, within the confines of our cities and neighborhoods that would really enhance the housing of those that we would call city dwellers, folks that move to town.
Any last shot over the bow questions for Marty, as long as we have him here as a resource this afternoon? Well, Marty, thank you so much for sharing this information. Francis, I'm wondering if we could move into, before we do that, if people want to get in touch with you, Marty, after this, if they have a question that occurs to them after we get offline here, how do we get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. They can go right online at omahalandbank.org. We have an info page out there that they can go ahead and pick up the information that they might need in order to take care of us and correspond with us. We'd like to chat with them that way, or they can call me directly right here at our office at 402-800-1240, 402-800-1240, or drop me an email. Very simple, Marty B, M-A-R-T-Y-B, at omlb.org. Again, Marty B at omlb.org.
We've also had a last question from David who asks, will the PowerPoint be available?
Yes, I can sure make that available through Francis. If you want to, Francis or Deb, I can make that available to you guys. And please, we'll let that go out to all the participants today. And if they want to share it wider than that, please feel free to do so.
Wonderful. We can't thank you enough. And thank yous are also beginning to pour into the chat box. And please feel free to continue to put your questions into the chat box. Francis, I'm wondering if what we could do now is to open up everyone's microphone. We have a little bit of debrief and final thoughts. We'd like to hear from folks who can help us not only evaluate this presentation a bit, but also give some insight as to future ones as well. So, lines are open here, and can we move your Marty, can you give back your screen?
I sure
to
can.
Francis? There. Either orally, if you would like to share orally, or to tap into the chat box, would you share with us what is one piece of information that you gained this afternoon that you didn't know before 2 o'clock? What was one new piece of information?
Just how land banks work.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
This is Joni Jesperson from Western Nebraska, and I guess I'm really excited about this new piece of legislation. And, you know, listening to the Omaha Land Bank is exciting, but for us out here, that opens maybe possibilities in the future, and I hope we hear something in April. So thank you all very much.
Good, very good. Joni, if there's somebody in your community or to all the communities across the state, if you'd like me to come and speak to your community, whether it be a group of residents, a group of your officials, or whomever, please don't hesitate. I'd love to make the time, love to make the trip. And as I said earlier, I love to drive Nebraska. So please let me come if I can and be able to share this with you in person. And you can help me with questions and everything else, but I'd love to come and talk to you about it.
Thank you, Marty. I appreciate that very much. We're working very hard in our village of Hemmingford to create some opportunities, and you may just be hearing from us sooner than you think. And another interesting piece, my son lives down in Omaha, and he had been a resident with Big Muddy Urban Farm.
Sure.
And that has been a phenomenal opportunity to go into Gifford Park and redo some houses and try to make that a neighborhood again. And I know they've been working in some of those pieces. So just so interesting. And I appreciate it very much listening today.
That's great, Joni. I want you to know, too, that we work with Big Muddy. We'll have about 60 to 70 properties this year that will not be buildable, so we will turn those into garden lots. They'll be available to the public, no matter who they are, for $25 lease per year to be able to lease it for a garden property. And as I said earlier, we've got all kinds of properties, whether they be buildable, adjacent lots for a neighbor, or in this case, working with Big Muddy Urban Farms and also with folks like City Sprouts to turn these into garden lots at just $25 per year.
Okay, great. Francis, next question. Talking about the process itself at this point, because this was our inaugural webinar and we would like to continue to do them and improve them in the future. Tell us what worked well for you in this kind of format, please, either in the chat box or orally, please. Well, let's go to the other side then. Next slide, Francis. What suggestions would you have for improvements in this kind of format for future webinars? And Sarah Arnett had said it was easy to access. Great. Any suggestions for improvements process-wise? All right. Francis, next slide, please. What topics would you like to see covered in future webinars? What do you want to learn or know about?
Can we think about this and respond later?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. And please just get in touch with Francis or with Sharon and over at SCED, and we'll design it around what you want to see happen.
That would be great.
Francis, bring us on home.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for showing interest, and thank you, Marty, for being such a wonderful speaker, and Deb, our facilitator. Our next webinar is scheduled for March 15th at 2 p.m. We don't have a topic for that yet, but keep an eye out. I'll be sending an email letting you know what the topic's going to be and the format. So if you have any questions or want a copy of this recording, you can contact me at francis@sced.us. And I think that's about it. So thank you all for joining.
This has been delightful. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Deb. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to present the land bank to you and the opportunity for you to have something that might work for your community, your village, all across the state of Nebraska.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Drive safe and stay warm.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you, Francis.